The Pittsburgh Steelers found a way to get the W against the Browns 26-22. We'll break down all the facets of this game, the defense creating plays, but also losing some plays. And of course, what's still going on with that offense that never got in the red zone, but did find a way to score. All that and more here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders from SteelersNow.com. Post-game reaction. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel's sportsbook is the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more with right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We'll have more on them later. I said before, we're joined by Alan Saunders. He's from SteelersNow.com. We thank Alan for always being on our Tuesday episodes, and especially because we're recording this at like 3 in the morning. I don't know how you do it, Alan. You're just an animal with how you go after things in all things journalism, but I'm glad you can make time to be on our show after it was a long game on Monday night.
I didn't think we were ever going to get out of there.
Nope.
I felt like that was like a 5-hour football game. It was brutal. And I think it makes it hard to, like, while you're watching it, like, really analyze what's happening, because the pace was awful. And so much of, like, Mike Tomlin talks about, like, the narrative of a game and, like, how things are going to happen. Throw the whole thing from this game out, because, like, I don't think anybody figured that the Steelers weren't going to play without we're going to play without Minka Fitzpatrick, and the Browns are going to play without Nick Chubb. So, like, I don't know. It's a weird football game. It was a weird game. Lots of weird stuff happened.
It was a weird game, and not that this was weird because these guys are playmakers, but TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith getting 2 touchdowns. Now, leading up to this game, I've been saying if the Steelers were going to win this game, they need their edge rushers to dominate. They need their edge rushers to be the key difference makers who just get after Deshaun Watson, who wreck the game and make it. I didn't think they was going to score 14 points for the team. That's ridiculous. But they found a way to do it. Alan, what the heck goes into these guys?
I think there's a lot to it, man. I mean, I wrote in my pregame primer that I thought TJ Watt was going to have 2 turnover-worthy plays. And I think TJ only had 1. But certainly Alex Highsmith had 2, and 2 of them turned into touchdowns. I think we saw really this defense not even anywhere near its full potential, but its playmaking potential, especially when you talk about the sort of mix and match pieces maybe had, but have available to them, and the talent of the players involved is special. So, look at the first interception, right? First play of the game, the Steelers come out in a look. I have been covering and following the Steelers for 6 years, 5 years. I've been following the Steelers my entire life. They literally came out in a look that I had never seen before practice this week, to put Minka Fitzpatrick on the boundary, which they've never done before.
Nope.
The Browns came out, didn't know what to make of it, threw a ball that Deshaun Watson should not have thrown, gets tipped, gets intercepted, and then Alex Highsmith is an edge rusher playing in space, catches the ball and scores. So you have a chess piece in Minka Fitzpatrick that allows you to do different things as a coordinator. Then you do some stuff that the other team doesn't expect, and then you have an elite athlete that can take advantage of it. Fast forward to the end of the game, TJ Watt's talking about this play at the end of the game. He said, me and Alex, we saw this on tape. We knew they had a tendency. They like to go play action, a certain look. We were like, this is going to be it. This is going to be the play action. There's zero. Go watch this rep from Alex Highsmith there is zero hesitation that he is pass rushing. He is going straight up the field, just torches Jedrick Wells. TJ had a double team on that play.
Mm-hmm.
He's free to get the ball and scoop and score. When you have elite players that can do different things and put them in different positions to make plays, that's what makes, I think, the Steelers defense, that's what gives it the potential to be special. And I think that's what we really saw on display on Monday night.
Meanwhile, on the other side, the Cleveland Browns had Myles Garrett. He had one tackle, one quarterback hit, and that was it. And it's funny, I posted that because Alex Highsmith had 7 tackles, a sack, a forced fumble. I think he had 2 tackles for loss and a pick 6. TJ Watt had 4 tackles, a sack, a recovered fumble, returned for a touchdown, and a tip pass. I mean, it is clear. Like, listen, I get that Myles Garrett does some great things. I'm not saying he's not a great player and all that, but this was yet another night that could encapsulate how TJ Watt especially is a game breaker, but how Alex Highsmith is also a game breaker. And yet again, on a stage where the Browns needed to overcome the Steelers, it was the Steelers edge rushers making a difference and Myles Garrett not.
And I think you have to really emphasize what is the making of the difference, right? If we go look at the stats here, total net yards, Cleveland 408, Pittsburgh 255. Okay,
yep.
So the Browns defense on the whole played much better than the Steelers defense.
Sure.
And yet the Steelers defense came away with 14 points on 2 splash plays. And they got two other turnovers, sacked Deshaun Watson on the last drive of the game to set up a 4th and long. They made, when Mike Tomlin talks about splash and weighty downs, playing defense down in and down out in the NFL with the way the rules are skewed towards the offense is impossible. You can have good defenses and you can have good days. Certainly the Steelers have had their share of dominant defenses. But your defense has to be able to punch back. And I think the difference in this game was that the Steelers defense gave some ground, but then they went and got the football and they made big plays. And the Browns, they kept the Steelers bottled up. The Steelers offense did, I'm sure we're going to talk about it. Steelers offense didn't do anything.
We're going to get to it.
In this game. They didn't do anything. But where was the big plays for the Browns? They just weren't there. And so I think that's, to me, that's a fundamental, almost a thinking level about how do you want to be a great defense? Do you want to be the great defense that holds a team to 250 yards, or do you want to be the great defense that scored 2 touchdowns, got the ball out 2 more times, sacked the quarterback basically at will? I think the Steelers want to be the defense that gives up 400 yards and wins the game. And I think that theory of their defense came through today more than anything.
I think it certainly did. I also thought that, in key situations, they found ways to win. I also say I thought Cole Holcomb really stepped up in some big moments. On a 3rd down and short conversion, he forced a holding penalty that pushed him back, and then got another play. I forget it was a sack or
he punched the ball out on him.
He punched the ball out. That's what it was. He forced the fumble. I was blanking on that play, but a forced fumble and a hold in a key situation that erased what was really scoring territory for the Browns in a tight game. I thought he stepped up. I thought DeMonte KZ stepped up in the absence of Minkah Fitzpatrick. I also think Keanu Neal. He wasn't a guy that really dominated the game, but he came in with 6 tackles. And, when Minkah Fitzpatrick went out, the safety position looked a lot stronger than it did last week. We'll get to the guys who weren't good because, this was still a very sloppy football game. This was not by any means a clean win for the Steelers, but it was a win where you have a lot to grade, a lot to clean up, a lot to work on. But it's much better to have to work on those things coming off of a win, and especially a division win in what looks to be a tight AFC North. And you're still only a game back from the Ravens. You now have the half tiebreaker over the Browns before they play again later this season. You're a game up on the Bengals, and you're in a position where you play the Raiders next week and the Texans after that. If you can handle your business, you can fix coming out of the gates in a better fashion off of what you did last week.
Yeah, I think they put themselves in position. I asked Mike Tomlin, I was like, hey, Yeah, he has kind of just like made 3 big plays and held on in this game. He's like, "I'm not gonna apologize for winning." Like, and I thought that was a great line. Like, he's like, "Look, did they play a great game? No. Did they win? Yes." You gotta have those, and, obviously, they gotta play better, and, but I do think that they have the ability to do this to teams where they don't need to dominate to beat you, and I think that's frustrating. I think if I was a Browns player, I'd be very frustrated by this loss, because it comes in that fashion where I think the Browns felt like they should have won this game.
I feel like there's more than a few Browns that feel that way after coming off the field. We'll get to the Steelers' offense because, like Alan said, as much as the defense won this game, the offense was doing a lot to lose this game. We'll talk about that and what that means for Kenny Pickett, Matt Canada, all the factors here on the other side of the break of the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. But first, I want to remind you guys that this episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Now, with Jace Medical, you get what's called the Jace case. It provides you 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jace case is filling out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of their board-certified physicians. You get ongoing care from the physicians on any treatment-related questions, doctor-created and doctor recommended. Don't be caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. Jace handles everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Jace Medical is simple. You go online, fill out a form, and then you get a prescription. Life-saving medications delivered right to your door. The Jace case gives you a peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure that you have medication in hand. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical plus an additional $20 off by using our code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, all capital letters, all one word, when you go to Jace Medical. And that's Jace, that's Jace, JASE Medical.com. JASE medical.com and use the promo code Locked On at checkout for JaceMedical.com. We're also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel, of course, the number one sports book in all of America. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 and get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and visit the NFL season and get an offer that you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders from SteelersNow.com coming at you right now. Alan, the defense, like we said, wasn't exactly clean. They still let the ball get moved a lot. But let's focus on the offense for a sec here. Kenny Pickett completes 50% of his passes, 15 of 30, 222 passing yards, does throw a touchdown, also throws an interception here. The Steelers in this game, only 9 first downs, 4 of 14 on third downs, that's 29%, and never got into the red zone. Now, the pass to Pickens for a touchdown, good job. Kenny Pickett took the pressure, he took a hit, delivered it. Pickens made him pay with the yak. You've been waiting for that big play all season, for a while, even longer. But when you look at this game, and we'll get into Matt Canada in a second, he's not free of any criticism here, as well as the offensive line. But looking at Kenny Pickett, what are you seeing in his mistakes and his successes right now?
I mean, I don't see consistency. I think that's the biggest thing I
agree.
can say is that it's not consistently bad. It's not consistently good. It's not consistently bad either. I feel like we saw some flashes of the quarterback that he would like to be and can be. It just was not happening nearly often enough. And I do think he's being pressured a lot more than I anticipated him being pressured, given the upgrades that they made to the offensive line. I really thought that Isaac Seumalo would be a bigger difference maker in that regard. I still think there's getting a lot of pressure on the backside, the left side, and up the middle. So I think he's getting pressured a lot. I don't think he looks particularly good under pressure. And I think this was not an environment where, consistency was going to be easy for him in the beginning. The first game he's ever played without Deontay Johnson. You knew that was going to be tough to overcome. I thought the Browns did some nice things with George Pickens. If you see that, if you go watch the interception on the third play of the game, it's kind of a gotcha coverage, right? Where they have somebody lined up over Freiermuth and they just bail on him and come over to Pickens. And Pickett's got to see that happening and make an adjustment, but also like he didn't really have that much time, I think I think the reaction to the pressure is speeding up his decision-making process in a way that's not always necessarily the best. And then for whatever reason, he's just missing a couple throws. And I think that the end result of that is you get what Mike Tomlin calls popcorn, where you have a bunch of things going wrong, not necessarily the same thing every time, but it adds up to way too much negativity for the offense to overcome. I actually thought the offense moved the ball okay, but it was in like these tiny little stretches where they'd get 2 first downs in a row and then you blink and it was 3rd and 10. And you're like, oh, geez, here we go. And like, this is not an offense in general that's built for 3rd and 10. It's really not an offense that's built for 3rd and 10 when it doesn't have Deontay Johnson, and it's playing against a really good Cleveland defense that, by the way, just shut down Joe Burrow. So like, that's not what they're good at. They have to stay on schedule. And I think, you can't ignore any of the sources of that negativity. I didn't think Naji Harris was good enough in this game, especially in the first half. I don't think he took all the available yards that were there. He dropped an easy pass.
He did drop an easy pass.
I didn't think he was good enough. I didn't think that Matt Canada used enough of the weapons that were available to him. Where were the touches for Pat Freiermuth? We got some of the screens, but it was like screens on 3rd and 10. Like, where were the screens in position where you could actually kind of catch teams off guard and be dangerous? I didn't think we saw enough of Calvin Austin in this game. And so, like, it has to be all of those things. It can't be any one of those things. I don't think the play calling was atrocious. I don't think Kenny Pickett was as bad as he was in the first game, but if both of them aren't better and Harris isn't better and the line isn't better, they all have to get better, because there isn't one single thing that is sinking this offense. It's the whole group.
I hear you on that. It is the whole group. I will say this. With Naji Harris in the first half, it was rough. But he started to figure something out in the second half. He had those 2 runs. He has now had, it was also, he doesn't break off big runs. He's now had 3 big runs in the last 2, in the Steelers' first 2 games. And at least 2 of those runs have come when the offensive line hasn't really done a whole lot. He's kind of just broken a playlist. And I think Naji Harris is still kind of frustrated with just that this offense still is in a position where they can give him consistent room to work. The 2-point conversion, he tried to jump and he was hit right at the 2-yard line. There were 2 defenders waiting for him before he could even get going. And he didn't make that play work, but I look at what he was able to do, and I kind of like, again, I think that the Steelers are in a rough predicament right now. I think the Browns were clearly playing the run. They were up looking to take that away and say, hey, Kenny Pickett, come beat us, because we're not going to let you guys just have a balanced offense. We're going to take at least one thing away. And the Steelers offensive line hasn't been good enough yet to necessarily keep him clean in the midst of all that. And then playing into that, you see that Jaylen Warren on the ground did worse than Naji Harris, but his catches were what made the difference. If he doesn't catch that 1 third down conversion before the George Pickens touchdown, there is no George Pickens touchdown. And there was a play where he caught the ball and there were 3 dudes that were in space ahead of him, and he found a way to just get forward and get yards so that he could move the chains and keep the drive alive. I think stuff like that is huge. And again, it shows why these guys are a 1-2 punch together, because they can both do different things, and they can also keep their fresh legs out there, so they're both assets for the Steelers throughout the game.
Yeah, I think Najee is definitely the one that is more affected by fewer reps for the offense. Like
Yeah.
he's a bigger dude that wants to be able to wear people down and get into a rhythm and get moving,
Hmm.
whereas Warren is more sudden and more sporadic and more of a receiver. And I think it doesn't affect his game as much. So I think like this was kind of a Jalen Warren game for me, where the Steelers weren't getting a lot of first downs, they weren't going on long drives, they were in a lot of third and long situations. It was more of a Jalen Warren game. But I think Naji Harris still could have been better. And I think,
Sure.
like I didn't think this was a game, and like I'll have to go back and rewatch it. But I didn't think this was a game where like Matt Canada was awful in terms of play calling. But there were like one or two or three throughout this game where you're just like, oh, what was that?
Why
And
did you try that?
they're just not good enough to overcome those right now.
Right.
Where and I did think there was some good design in there too. Like I saw a couple plays that I was like,
Yeah.
gets Jalen Warren wide open on one. I think he had Connor Hayward wide open on another one, schemed up. There
He had
was
Calvin Austin on a play, the one where Kenny Pickett threw it behind him. If Kenny just hits him
yes,
in stride, he had a blocker in front of him and a whole lot of it could have been a touchdown.
there was a couple with George on those in breaking routes, and that's something we've been wanting to see more of. And I think we did see more of it. And so, in a game where there's no Deontay Johnson, for George Pickens to get that many targets, for him to be that open that often, I mean, obviously, George Pickens is very good. I'm not taking
Right.
this away from him, but like, you've got to scheme that up a little bit. Like, something you're doing is working. If you only have one really, really dangerous wide receiver and you're able to target him 10 times, like that tells me that you're probably doing some good stuff there. And so, I just think every one of those pieces is contributing to the negativity that is sinking this offense right now. And they're probably not going to fix all of it, but you just can't have that. You can't have a running back underperforming and an offensive line underperforming and a quarterback underperforming and the coordinator sticking his, just messing it up every once in a while. They need to be more consistent overall. I think that's the only way they're going to improve. And yeah, I mean, Canada's got to own it. But again, I'll have to watch it again. But I didn't feel like there were just so many like WTF moments in terms of play calling in this one.
The two that really stuck out to me, that where I was kind of like, come on, Matt. Because anybody who watches or listens to this show knows that I'm one of the last people to bang on Matt Canada for things. Because I'm like, look, if there's guys open and there's reasonable plays to be made, it was a good play call, whether or not the players executed it. But in this game, I felt like the reverse they called to Calvin Austin after two of Naji Harris's really big runs. Jalen Warren comes out, gets 5 yards, and then they come out and they run the reverse, and then the Browns are all over it, and now it goes from 2nd and 5 to 3rd and 10. And now you're behind the sticks. You're not back to where you want to be, and that puts them in a rough spot. And then the other one was on the last third down the Steelers had offensively, and they tried like a QB option, and the Browns were just all over it. And the Browns were very aggressive to stop the run tonight. They kept coming after Najee. They kept coming after the line of scrimmage, and I think that was them saying, "You got to beat us with your quarterback. He's going to have to make a play here." And
yeah, it didn't seem like the Steelers were able to ever get the Browns' pursuit of the run game slowed.
right.
Like those plays are designed. You're trying to run a reverse because they're sitting on the run, right? It's like, oh, they're going after the first guy. They're going after the first guy. Oh, well, you call a reverse. I mean, the theory of it makes sense. I didn't think the Steelers executed the play very well. For one, they didn't block it up very nicely.
No,
but like, they were just swarming to the ball. Read options, same thing. Any kind of misdirection the Steelers tried, it was not slowing that pursuit. They were just coming. And they were getting them. Now the screen game worked, but they only did the screen game. I felt like in these like absurd down and distance situations, they didn't really get after it in like a way that I thought was going to be impactful in keeping the offense on the field. But I think they have a pretty athletic offensive line. I do think they could be a good screen team. I think it's a good thing for them to have to try to start slowing some of these people down from just running right at Naji Harris on every play.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it. Like they're just overcommitting. He will not beat us. We'll force Kenny Pickett to beat us. So that was certainly a factor there. I want to talk to Alan about the rookies who did or didn't play in this game, and where we're looking at, could they start to make more of a difference for the Steelers very soon. We'll get to that on the other side of the break here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. But first, I want to remind you guys, this show is also sponsored by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the number one way to play daily fantasy sports, where you can win up to 25 times your money by all you have to do is pick 2 to 6 players. 2 to 6 players. If you guess right on them having more or less than a stat projection, then you're going to win money. And sometimes you can win up to 25 times your money. And it's simple. Just pick 2 to 6 players that you think you have a beat on for fantasy on your day. And if you guess correct on more or less on their stats projection, which is set up by Prize Picks, you're not competing against a bunch of other people, just against Prize Picks. You have a chance to win up to 25 times your money. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions and can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, which every Tuesday Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25%, giving you even more value. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for first deposit match up to $100. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, there was a lot of noise for a certain rookie to be playing in this game. And I think that maybe the Steelers got some ammunition to maybe finally ignite what fans have been calling for. And that's Joey Porter Jr. getting more playing time. Levi Wallace, look, Levi Wallace was good for the Steelers last year. He got interceptions. He stayed in place. There were times he got beat, but he was more than serviceable. He was an asset to your defense. This year, he is a liability. He was the guy that missed the tackle on the Christian McCaffrey touchdown run last week, and this week, when the Browns, granted, it was a bit of a broken run because they were dominating the line of scrimmage on different parts of the field, but on the long run that they had from their backup running back, when he cuts it back, Levi Wallace, that's his spot. That's his gap that he was cutting back up through, and he just didn't close it. And then he tried to get off into the sprint to chase him. I think that there's some clear issues there with Levi Wallace. He doesn't close the gap there. He doesn't do a good job chasing it down. Minka Fitzpatrick does do a great job chasing him down, a la Cam Hayward versus Justin Herbert. But I think that was the play where Minka Fitzpatrick hurt himself, and now he had to go to the hospital with a chest injury. We don't know exactly what that could be, but if he's in the hospital for a chest injury, that could be a torn pec. That could be a lot of things. Just all in all, I think that shows here that Joey Porter Jr. may need a shot at outside corner, Allen, because it's still limited. But in this game, he had a key breakup on a third down, and he had really good coverage in the final fourth down play. I feel like at this point, he at least might be able to give you what you're getting at least from Wallace.
I guess it depends on how much of what they're doing in that dime package will carry over to what they're doing in the base defense. Like, for example, I don't think Levi Wallace gave over any completions in that dime either.
True.
And so I would really need to look and see, what are they actually asking Joey Porter Jr. to do right now? And, there are some times when you can have a player in a small role, and success in that small role does not mean that they will have success in a bigger role. And sometimes it does. I think they have to be smart about the cornerback position. And here's what I'll say about Levi Wallace. Not a good game. Not a good game.
Not a good game.
But largely keeps the ball in front of him.
He does, usually.
I mean, the two run defense plays have been the backbreakers for him.
Yeah.
In the receiving game, there's been a lot of catch and tackle, way more than you want.
Right.
But it has been catch and tackle. And if you're talking about the philosophy of this defense, like we did in the open, they can live with some catch and tackle as long as you keep a lid on it. I think the fear with a young corner is the inability to keep a lid on it, right? How many plays is Joey Porter Jr. going to make if he gives up a long touchdown to offset that? It's going to have to be a lot. And I think it's tough. What I would like to see is find a way to get him some reps. I really felt like in the second half of the San Francisco game, I understand you're not playing well. You don't want to, you want to use those times to get your starters right. But I think that was an opportunity for them to get Joey Porter Jr. some reps in the regular defense in a low stakes environment. I think that's that has to be the next step. Is find some ways to mix him in and don't just have him limited to being the dime corner, and then see what happens. I don't think this is not a player that came to the Steelers with this pedigree that he was going to walk in and start on day one. I don't think that was an expectation that anybody had. It's a reaction to Levi Wallace not playing that well, and I understand that. But that's not how you're trying to go about things as a football team. You're trying to play your guy because he's ready, not because the guy in front of him isn't playing well.
I'm right with you there. Let's switch to the other rookie that I thought kind of stepped up in this game. That was Keeanu Benton. Just from the naked eye, I haven't watched a whole lot of tape yet, but it seemed like the Steelers put him in the second half a little bit more for Montrevious Adams, who did force a fumble in this game. But Keeanu Benton, when he was in there, Alan, I thought he looked really good.
I thought he was a big difference maker. Now, again, Chubb versus no Chubb makes the first half versus the second half a very different conversation. But I thought, the Steelers were overselling a bit to not let him get outside, and that their kind of game plan with Chubb was like, we can live with 4 yards of carry up the middle as long as he doesn't break any big ones. And I thought they were executing that game plan okay, but I think there were plays within that game plan to be made where they could have stopped him shorter than they did frequently, and they just weren't making them. And I thought when Benton got in the game, they started making some of those plays. You started seeing him come off blocks and get into running lanes as opposed to just being blocked. And, maybe, okay, like, a guy like Mon Adams, I feel like he's really good at not getting moved, but I don't really see a lot of, his ability to get off a block and then go impact a lane. He just in the way. And so I really thought Larry Ogunjobi had a great game.
I thought he did too.
Really, really needs to be recognized as a guy who is not even close to 100% and was awesome. And I thought that him and Benton together were probably the best defensive linemen the Steelers had.
I agree with that assessment here. I want to flip over to the offense to ask about the other rookie, of course, Broderick Jones. How did you think Dan Moore Jr. held up in this game? Myles Garrett only one tackle, no sacks, but they still didn't get the ground game going. Kenny Pickett still faced a lot of pressure in this one. Do you think we're any closer to seeing Broderick Jones getting his first shot at left tackle for the Steelers?
Well, I think we're closer because there was no chance they were going to let Broderick Jones play against one of these first 3 edge rushers unless he had to. So we're closer because 2 are down and one's left to go. And like, it's really hard with line play. Like, I make fun of coaches all the time. Oh, go check the tape. But like, it's true.
But we have to check the tape. It's that hard.
But I thought Moore was, considering his opponent, quite serviceable in that game. I mean, I don't think Kenny Pickett got hit from behind. I don't remember that happening. He got flushed from the pocket a couple times, but I don't think he took any blindside hits. If anything, I felt like the pressure up the middle was giving him more trouble than the pressure from the edges. And so I think, now, did they run against him? No. Was there room for them to run against him? Not really. But I think if you're talking about Myles Garrett, you will take that. Like, I think that's still a win. If you can just keep that guy from wrecking your whole day, if you can keep him from doing what TJ Watt did to the Browns, then you'll accept that and move on. I thought the interior of the line did not have a good game to me. And I thought that was one of that was surprising. Obviously,
Mhm.
you're not going to win against Garrett every rep. I thought the Steelers should be able to hold their own with the middle of this Cleveland line. I thought they got whipped like
Mason
significantly.
Cole did not look too good in this one.
Yeah. And I didn't think Sam Allen had a very good game either.
Agreed. There was one third down blitz where they brought the heat, and he just let his guy walk right up to Kenny.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like it was some kind of miscommunication, like because it wasn't like he missed him; he just wasn't even thinking that he was supposed to be blocking him. So it's impossible for us to know like where that was supposed to be. But just in general, I didn't think he was as good as I have seen him be, and you know, I think Dan Moore did more than enough to get another start here. I mean, like I didn't see anything super egregious from him specifically, but the line in general was not very good.
I agree. There's a lot to address on this offensive line. There's a lot to address across the team, but it's better for the Steelers that they get to address it after a win, and not just a win, a conference win and a divisional win over what was a tough team, Browns, that just took out the Cincinnati Bengals the week before. I think the Steelers will gladly take that along with the lessons they have to learn. He's Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, thanks so much for joining us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and what else you got coming up here on SteelersNow.com.
At @Saunders_PGH, at PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com, Steelers Now on YouTube, where my podcast, Steelers Afternoon Drive, lives. Maybe we'll get Chris on again this week, or maybe I'll just tease that we will for like another month and then do it eventually. I don't know.
You guys teased me for 3 weeks. I was like thinking I was coming on, and then you finally got me on there. I'm like, yeah. And then now it's been like 2 weeks already. What's going on with that, man?
You always got to leave the people wanting more. You always got to leave the people wanting more. And trying out a new thing for this week. So we're trying to push the subscription content. We got Derek Bell doing all kinds of great analysis over there. And so I'm writing a big story that should be out by the time you're seeing this podcast about the Steelers defense. And so I hope that you guys go read it.
Absolutely do go check it out. He does great work. He's Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Car Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Check me out here on the Locked On Steelers podcast Monday through Friday, covering your Pittsburgh Steelers, whether it's on your favorite podcasting app or on YouTube. There's still a lot to get into. We didn't have time. We got to, Ross gets on me if I make these shows too long. There's still a lot I want to break down. We talked a little bit about Matt Canada. I haven't had time to really watch over the game in its entirety again and get the chance to look at all the angles and stuff. But I really want to look at it and see just where the Steelers offense is right now, and how they could move forward with Matt Canada and all the things we saw, because there's still so much to break down from this game. But Alan, thanks so much for joining me. Thank you all for joining me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Stay tuned. We got a lot more coming your way this week. We got our Wednesday episode coming up, where we'll see what's the aftermath after talking to Mike Tomlin on his Tuesday press conference, which is still at noon. So if you're listening to this or watching this beforehand, best believe we'll be addressing that. And then we got crossover Thursday again, and then we're getting ready for some more primetime football coming the Steelers' way. Lots of action here. Thanks again for tuning in to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'll see you Wednesday with more talk on your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.